Hello everybody, and we're going to be going over Midi-QOL. Midi-QOL is a module that lets you automate and have better flowing combat. So, without further ado, we're going to go over it. So, all the things that Midi-QOL can cover is anything from combat-related things, spells, weapons, attacks, to features, to potions, to all that good stuff. While potions and all that need to be regulated by dynamic active effects to apply effects like, say, a fire giant strength potion, Midi-QOL can help with sort of the use of items that do rolls and all that sort of stuff. Things that do effects, like say you have a splash potion. It'll help you, sort of roll for that if there's a saving throw, and it will help apply that with dynamic effects. Dynamic active effects, sorry. I've already done a video on dynamic active effects. If you want to see how that goes, check out my other video. It was the previous video. Mind that dynamic effects is another video I have, but that one's deprecated. You want to look for dynamic active effects. Alrighty. You'll also notice that I have another video covering Midi-QOL. That one is sort of done during a time when Midi-QOL was broken, and my sound levels were also fairly poor. So as soon as you get Midi-QOL and you install it, you want to go ahead and make sure you enable it. Then go into the configure settings and go to the module settings. You want to scroll down to find Midi-QOL. If you have tidy UI, it'll all be like this. So it has the workflow settings and then the sort of base settings. Workflow settings is sort of where the meat's at, but we'll go over these as well. Enable roll automation just adds roll automation settings to the workflow settings panel. You want to make sure this is enabled. Excuse me, sorry about that. Add attack and damage buttons to the item inventory list means that when you go over, since Midi-QOL replace things with quick rolls, it'll add these. We'll just actually leave this open for ease of use. Add damage buttons to chat message. What this means is sort of these things right here. You could have them. I personally like to have them, but you don't have to have them. It also doesn't look great, I'll admit, with the compact cards, and we'll go over what's doing this in just a second. GM sees all whispered messages, which means if players are whispering to each other, you can see it. I personally don't. I trust my players. But, if you don't trust your players, you can go ahead and enable that. Really hide private/blind/stealth rolls. So, what this means is that when you roll, well, if you have a blind roll, rather, we'll just do that easy, and you did /r1d6, oops, I can't type today, /r1d6. If you were a player, you would normally see sort of question marks, question mark, well, question mark D, question mark, and question mark as the result. However, with this means your players will not see that. Fast forward ability rolls. So currently, if you use ability rolls, you'll get this pop-up menu. You can also use shift by base to roll without seeing that pop-up menu normally. Control to do it with disadvantage, and alt to do it with advantage. Sort of like how Midi-QOL does this for items and effects. Adds a fast roll, they're called. You can do this for ability rolls. So clicking it will have the same effect as if you were holding shift. Control and alt will still work. I personally do not, because even though you can add effects with dynamic active effects, I find that ability rolls are going to be those most often that you're going to want situational bonuses added to it. But you can do that if you like it. Choose how to roll critical damage. So, it is by default on DD5e default. though you can also do base max only, max critical dice, and max all dice. So in other words, when a attack rolls a critical dice, usually a d20 or a d19 if you have it set to lower, or just whatever threshold you have put personally, it will use these rules to apply the damage. Experimental. Apply checks before doing speed/macro roll. I never use experimental things when it comes to Midi-QOL because usually T-Ponzi really means it when he says experimental. Though oftentimes they work, I usually do not use them. I would recommend you don't until it's out of experimental phases. So in other words, what this means is it'll check before the item rolls if they're currently in range and the user is at full health. So in other words, it won't let you do something if you're out of range for the spell. Otherwise, you'd have to sort of keep that, focus on yourself. I personally wouldn't use it just because there's situational things that can add, more distance if you're using height rules, etc. Colored border messages. So borders only. So if you see this, I quite like it. It helps differentiate who's talking. You can also use border name text, border name background. We'll go over what both of those look like in just a second. So you'll see that it says who's talking, and it has the name, which is usually just black, in your personal player color. Mine is pink. And you see that instead it makes the name still black, but it has the background of the name pink. I personally don't like them. They look a little bit gaudy, but if it helps add a bit of flair to your game, go ahead and use it. And then this is what it looks like without. Ooh, I forgot to save. This is what it looks like without all that. I personally like the colors around the borders, but not so much with the name. So this is a very interesting feature. However, it is experimental. So again, I don't use it. But in other words, so one thing that is lacking right now, and it doesn't really matter if, as long as you can keep in mind that a player is sneaking or that they're invisible, that's fine. In other words, you can hide a character. If you want to know how I'm doing this, it is without using this menu. It is a macro, and you can just go ahead and I'll show you that macro. There you go. So what this would do is, sorry, I keep messing with the settings so much. What this would do is it means if you hide a player's token, they can't see it, even if it's their token. This setting is meant to sort of allow players to see tokens that they own, that they have ownership of in the permission setting, so that they can control it and stuff like that. It would be mostly useful for sort of keeping track and all that, and if you have like, PvP, it was especially useful for that, so you don't have to move it for them and just sort of tell them where they are, and do any kind of silly stuff like that. It would also help with, sort of spur of the moment charm effects. If a player gets charmed and has to attack against them and attack against the party, or become hostile. There's many different ways this would be applicable. Unfortunately, it's experimental. I would warn against using it until it's out of the experimental phase, which it eventually will be. Knowing the creator of the module, he's very, some people will add things and I'll fix it later, or I'll work on it later, and maybe it never gets done. Maybe it gets done in a year or two. But the creator of this module is very active, and I'm confident that it would be fixed up in due time. So if you can wait, I would suggest that you wait, just to, sort of safeguard against any mishaps. Enable debugging just sort of, enables debugging. It would just sort of will fill up your console with all of the good debugging stuff. Don't use it unless you're, helping, or helping, sort of check with bugs, or you know what you're doing. I mean, it doesn't really affect anything, but there's no point of filling up your console. It's very useful to keep your console kind of clean, just in case you need to, look up calls and see if anything else went wrong. So let's go open up the meat of this thing. Workflow settings. So something new from last time we did this is you can now change what each modifier button does. The first thing you want to do is enable speed rolls. So speed rolls is the term for when you click here, when you click here, when you click here, when you click on any item that is usable by the usual synths. When you click here, it will do a speed roll, which means it will apply all these settings. All these settings don't really apply to any other section. So let's close this. You can also change what advantage is, what disadvantage is, what critical is, and what versatile is. So critical means only applies when you're using damage. So I want to sort of preface this by, again, ignore this misspelled fireball. It was from a different testing phase. I want to correct myself for sorry. Damage can be done automatically if you just want to roll damage. And if you want to roll critical damage, that's how you do it, with Alt. And you can change that there. I'm sorry I didn't go over that before. I completely sort of forgot about the feature, even though it's a core feature. So the main thing, you probably don't want to change this, though you can. There's just something new that's been added. But the main thing from this bit of settings you want to make sure is enable speed rolls. It is sort of the all-encompassing enabler of all of this stuff. Speed rolls are sort of important. They would, like, if you use them, speed rolls roll everything. Attack, and then if it hits, actually hits, it'll roll to damage. So you sort of want to make sure that that is enabled. Show item details in chat card. So we're going to go over what that looks like. Oh, actually you will not see that because I have a setting in here in core settings that hides. I'm actually not sure where it is. It would be in system settings, my bad, I'm so sorry. It sort of collapses the chat. So if you've ever been wondering how to collapse chat, it'll do that. So, and this doesn't even have any text, so it doesn't matter. In other words, it will add either card. Card plus details means that it'll add details about the item specific to the PC. And this means if it's a player, rather. And this will add the details if it's an NPC or a PC. I always usually do none, since I like them to be collapsed anyways. The two most important, in my opinion, settings here are merge roles into one card. So we'll look what each one looks like sort of without. So if you do not do this, it'll look like this. It'll sort of look like a mess. It'll say club attack roll, and then it hits club damage roll. With merge on, it'll look like this. A little bit cleaner. It doesn't fill your chat up so much. And then you can go even further, and I quite like this. It's actually just an absolute godsend. I love it. It looks so pretty. It not just looks pretty, it looks clean. It really just you know, cleans up your chat menu. It looks like this. Here we go with a hit. It looks like this. It adds both of them, and so instead of looking like this, it still merges them in one card, but instead of having this, it's more compact. And you can click on each one to see the roles. Do not worry. You can see all that information still. It's just a little bit more condensed, and it just looks so much nicer. And it also has a smaller card, a shorter card, I should say. So to further clean up your chat menu, make things look a bit nicer, especially when you're using, say, a fireball that hits multiple creatures at once. Before, the damage, the attacks, it would just fill up miles and miles of space in your chat menu. And now it'll be more condensed and a bit more readable, and you can actually see what's going on, so it actually adds to your play too, so it sort of speeds up combat just by that little bit. So hide token names. Hide token names means that if a token with a hidden name hits and saves, and it says so in the chat menu, it won't show up. Whatever you put here, I usually use unknown or unknown creature. You can also change this per sort of token. You'll have a little mask menu for creatures, this right here, and you can show, and you can like sort of enable this or disable this by default, and you can change the unknown like creature name. So if it's a person, you can say, you know, hooded figure, but unknown creature is a good sort of catch-all, and that would show up right here, and only for players. So it would say unknown creature to players seeing that there. Chat cards use token name. In other words, it would just use whatever the name of the token is, not so much what the name of the creature is. So it won't use the sheet; it will use exactly the token. So maybe you have token stamp, token mold. Sorry, if you have token mold, and you have the setting on where it adds numerical values to each subsequent creature of the same type from the same sheet, and it sort of adds kobold 1, kobold 2, kobold 3, etc. If you want players for some reason to see that, you can click this on, and it'll say here kobold 2, kobold 3, unless you know you're hiding their names. Auto target on template draw. This means that if you're using a spell like fireball, excuse the misspelled thing, again, it's sort of a changed fireball. There's a reason. That's why it's sort of called fireball. Excuse me. You can see that you'll get a sort of denomination that it's going to target once it's placed. And once it's placed, it'll target and do its effects. And we'll go over that in a second and show that. But for now, that's sort of what it means. So you can either have always or no, so it won't do that. It's important to do that if you want to do AoE things. I always use walls block because most spells say that walls block. And in the cases where it doesn't, you know, I can just, you know, manually fix that myself. Auto target for ranged target spells / attacks. So in other words, auto target means that it'll automatically target the nearest creature. Let's see, I believe it's this. I think one of my things, yeah, one of my it's just a minute, so let's just actually say doing that. Okay, sorry about that. One of my settings sort of breaks that. But I don't use it personally. You can, but that's sort of what it does. When item is rolled, and actually I'll show you, this is what's breaking it. Require targets to be selected before rolling. I always do that to sort of stop players from wasting spell slots and etc. And since I don't use that, it doesn't matter to have that enabled or disabled for me. When an item is rolled, automatically roll the attack if there is one. So in other words, for instance, like the club I was using, since I rolled the attack and it rolled the damage automatically if it is one. So in other words, if this was an item that just had an attack but for some reason had no damage, it would just roll the attack. Still, if this was disabled, it would roll the attack but not roll the damage automatically. It would just say that it hit and then you roll the damage. Hide roll details. This just means that you sort of, hide this stuff. You can hide that. You can hide the roll formula so they won't see this. You can hide this plus dice so nice dice. I don't use the module, but dice so nice is a module that shows 3D dice. Or entire roll, which means you won't see the formula, or you won't see the result. I believe you won't see the result. No, you just won't see the formula or the roll. There is I believe, something that hides the outcome. We'll get to that when we get to that. Auto fast forward rolls. So this is sort of like the option to fast forward ability rolls, except you can choose to do it for attacks, damage, or attack and damage. So in other words, you won't see that pop-up that we were talking about. You won't see this pop-up. Usually you see that for everything, but otherwise speed rolls will automatically do it, and it will also do it for attack. Oh no, it won't do it for attack. Sorry, it will only do it for speed rolls. Minor quality used to do it for attack and damage, but I think it's actually quite nice that they changed that, seeing as, if you are using these, they're probably using these for a reason. You're probably using them because you want to add situational bonuses. So it makes sense to have changed it to that. So, we'll go back up to here. Auto check if attack hits target. So, in other words, if you do this, it'll pretty much just add this here. It'll see whether or not it hits by checking the attack roll and placing it against the armor class. Per normal rules, you could say see all see result or only GM sees result. I have all see result, though if you were a GM who likes to sort of keep information hidden from players to continue suspense, or to have the option to fudge if you need to, it's a useful tool. I sometimes use it during boss fights and certain mysterious foes, but for the most part I have it all see results. Attack auto roll damage, you can have it never, always, so even if an attack misses, it'll roll the damage anyways. Or you can say only if the attack hits, so it rolls. If the attack hits the armor class, it'll then roll damage. Auto check saves, you can either have that off, all see result, only GM sees result, or all see result plus rolls. So in other words, you could see, it'll be sort of what I have now. Let's just go up to, well, actually I don't have a saving throw spell activated, so let's go ahead and finally do Fireball. We'll just show you what that looks like. There's those spell slots, so let's just say it doesn't consume a spell slot. Oops, I cast it on myself. You sort of see that it doesn't show you what he rolled, it just shows the damage. But it says that, but it does say test saves with 18, but it doesn't show you sort of the roll he made like this. I don't have the rolls shown just to sort of save chat space, but let's show you what that looks like without, and this time let's not hit him. Let's hit him. And here you see the dexterity saving throw. It's on a separate page. You sort of can fill things up. hence why I don't use it. But that's there if you want it. And then only Jim sees results. You won't see a difference because I am the GM, but that'll sort of just be the same as all see results, but only the GM sees it. Or you can have it off, and it won't auto check for saves, and you can do that manually. So if you want to automate things, you're probably looking to do that to have things saved. Display saving throw DC, so it will show the DC here. If you do not want this shown, you can click this off. This will only work with merge card. So, also I see a spelling error here. So probably want to report that to Tponze, the creator of the module. But yes, this only works with the merge card. I personally don't. I don't really have a problem with players seeing the DC of the save. It can sometimes give sort of fear if they see a huge DC. But you know, if you have a crazy DC or whatever, you can do have that off. Or if you're one of the players before that likes to sort of add suspense by hiding sort of things like that, or gives themselves the freedom to fudge rolls. Search spell description. So this is quite an interesting one. It's quite a useful one as well. It will look at a spell's description, as in here, and it will look through, and it will look for things like half as much damage on a successful one, or it will look for things like no damage. This is slightly misspelled again, but no fault to the creator. The creator's non-native English speaker, so you can give him some slack. Yes, so this is important if you want to have spells that you sort of don't do damage. He has it so that if this is off, it will automatically do half damage on the save. That's because most spells that have a saving throw and damage attached sort of function like that. But you can check this, and if you in the spell's description, you know, it describes what it does, it'll look for that and it'll do it for you. Prompts players to save rolls. I don't use this. It also works in conjunction with Let Me Roll That For You, a module that sort of you can use to prompt players to roll instead of saying, hey, you know, Jim, can you roll 1d20 for me? Or can you roll a wisdom saving throw? However, I don't use that since I sort of just use this, and if I want sort of a check outside of that, maybe for investigation and stuff, I just say, hey, could you roll me investigation? And then just go in and, you know, click that. But, you know, it's a bit simpler if you're maybe running a chat game. If you're not using a voice game, it's more useful for that. So, yeah. So let me roll for that for you. Let me roll that for you, that plus query. I don't use Let Me Roll That For You, so I'm not sure what the query part means. Chat message, this will just prompt players in chat. I don't use either. Oh, and also Let Me Roll That For You is a pop-up on the screen. It would show up like sort of how this shows up, but it will be something asking you to roll, you know, this thing, and you can click from that menu. Again, I don't use it. But you can. This is a how long in seconds to delay before rolling for the players. Now, let's go down. We have auto apply damage to target. Yes. So in other words, if a spell hits, it'll automatically apply damage to them. So see here, -9, 18, because they took half damage because they saved. But it took the 9, took it out, 383 down to 374. And you can either have no plus damage card, so that means no, it won't apply damage automatically, but it'll show this. This card is useful because you can click to apply updated HP, or you can reverse updated HP. So if you're using no, but you're using the damage card, you can go ahead and click this, and it will automatically take damage away from test 2, or if you have multiple menus, it'll have one of these for each target. And we can go ahead and I can actually show you that for you real quick. Let's just have this, and let's go ahead and cast Fireball again. And you see it has one for each of them. You can have yes, so it does apply damage, but doesn't show you the card. Yes plus damage card. So it'll show you this card. Without it, it will sort of look all the way up here. Let's go down a bit. This is without it, so it just does the attack, doesn't show the damage card. This is with it. It's useful if you want to see sort of what happened, if you want to see sort of the amounts afterwards. And it's also good if you want to see the damage immunities, resistances, and all that good stuff. That is important because down here you can apply damage immunities. So the great thing about Midi-QOL is that it takes into account both resistances and immunities. So if they're resistant, and say they're resistant to lightning, and you deal lightning damage to the elemental, it'll only take half damage per resistant rules, well, per normal base and core system rules for D&D 5e. Or if they're immune to poison and you say use poison on them, they won't take any damage no matter the roll. It would show this, and it'll show the main roll in brackets as if it sort of like here how it took half damage because it saved, but instead it would show 0 and it would say 374, 374. You can have that never. Apply immunities plus physical. So apply immunities plus physical means that weapons will get a new sort of effect modifier. It will be called magical, and that works in conjunction with a new immunity and resistance. So immunity means non-magical physical, so it means that any weapon that's not magical doesn't either have a plus or doesn't have the magical sort of property on the weapon, will not do damage to them, or you can make them resistant so that they only do half damage to them. Auto apply item effects to targets. This is important. You want this applied, you want this enabled, sorry. You want this enabled if you are using dynamic active effects. It doesn't sort of say, it still says dynamic effects, but you know, it means dynamic active effects. And you can also enable MIDI quality sounds lastly, but not least. This means you can use hype tracks, this is the playlist, sorry. This just sort of is what it pulls through, so I only have one in the sounds of Cogain because I stopped using audio. I also delete all the things. This is just the playlist it'll pull through. So when any weapon is used, it'll play this sound. When any spell is used, it'll play this sound. When any potion is used, it'll play this sound. When any item that is not one of these is used, it'll play this sound. When an attack roll is played, it'll play whatever sound you use. When a critical hit is rolled, so a 20 or whatever your critical threshold is, it'll play the sound. And when a fumble, or in other words a critical failure, i.e. a 1 is rolled, or e.g. a 1 is rolled, sorry, it'll play this sound. So hopefully this has been helpful in sort of getting you started with Roll20. Make sure all my settings are up to date. Yes, they are. If you have any questions, post those down below. I think that's everything. Yes, it is. So, Midi-QOL is a great module. I highly recommend it. One thing I recommend, because Midi-QOL requires you to target tokens, not select them. This is selection. This is target. So, normally, for a player, you just double right click if you're a player and it's a token other than one you own. But if you're a DM, you can't do that. You actually have to right click and go in and click this to target, or you have to click this in the sort of players menu or token menu rather, and you can click from there. Or you can hold shift and target multiple. I recommend a module called Easy Target. Right here, Easy Target. It lets you hold Alt and target while holding Alt. It makes it much easier, even for players, even though it can double right click. It's also easier just to have that option. My players prefer it over the right click, double right clicking. I prefer it over double right clicking. It's also useful for players if they own multiple targets and they're trying to heal targets they own or control, like maybe squires for paladins, if you let them control their own squires. I personally don't. Or pets. I let them control their own pets, for instance, if they're trying to heal those. It's hard to do that fast since they would have to use this well. Especially as a DM, you don't want to have to be doing all that. You want to be able to do it quickly, so Alt, double click with easy targets. And you don't even have to hold Shift when doing it. As long as you're holding Alt, you can target multiple. And it also makes deselection easy, because just like how you have selection, if you just draw over empty space, it deselects. If you hold Alt and draw over empty space, it deselects. It's very useful. I highly recommend it if you're going to be using Midi-QOL as much as I do. I've not used played a game without it since my first session, and I make sure everything is sort of set up to work with it. And mind, that doesn't entail anything at all past. Hello? Strange. That doesn't entail anything past just setting up two simple fields. One, make sure it has an action, so you see this. An action doesn't mean anything, just in other words, when an ability is new, you won't see anything here until you sort of add what kind of activation cost. Make sure that it has, this is good because this one doesn't, make sure it has a target parameter. So you could just have creature or self or object. Any of those will do, as long as it just has a sort of denominator, or if it's a radius, make sure it has 15-foot radius in order to drop a measured template when you use it. Range not important. Only thing that's important after that is to have what it sort of does. In other words, damage if you wanted to roll damage. So just make sure this field, and if it's a damaging ability, this field is set up, and any other field sort of that's important, be that versatile damage, other formula, saving throws. Saving throws are important if you want things to have saving throws. So yeah, you don't even have to set up anything special. You just have to set everything base, and it will sort of do it from there. So it takes no extra effort to set things up. You should be setting all your spells and abilities and items up like that so that players have the right amount of information and you have the right amount of information, just in case it's been a while since you made it. You should always be setting those up anyways. And if you are, you know, Midi-QOL just takes setting things up in the menu as you like it, and it works. It just works. There's not much else to say on Midi-QOL, though if you have any questions, comment down below and I will get to those as fast as possible. If you have any suggestions on what you want to see next, be it a module that I've worked with or that I haven't, let me know. I sort of focus on modules because there are many YouTubers out there, many content creators, be they in text form or helpful people through the Discord. And of course, video creators, they sort of cover the basics already. If you don't know anyone who does it, I recommend Encounter Library. He focuses on basics. I sort of watched a few of them when I was very new to Foundry, transferring over from Roll20. He was a big help, and he does great content. He doesn't, he is not a master of Lego talk, unlike myself. And he is also not a rambler, unlike myself. He's a little bit more focused. He has a little bit better production value. He knows how to edit. I do not. But you know, if I end up doing these more often, and these, you know, are useful to people, you know, maybe I'll look into it But as of now, they're sort of just videos I throw up here, just in case. But you know, um, just in case people find problems, because I find that modules don't have a lot of video content for them, especially not sort of the more niche ones. This Midi-QOL is definitely not a niche one. Neither is dynamic active effects, especially since active effects was added as a core feature. But you know, those are sort of the big ones, and even still, I'm hard pressed to find a video for them. Maybe now that's changed. I haven't looked in a while. But you know, at least a few weeks ago to a month ago, a couple months ago even, when I first was new, I was always looking for videos for modules. They just weren't existent. Roll20 does have that over Foundry currently, but that's just because Foundry's new. Eventually people who with a better understanding that can do videos like this a little bit better will come into play. Um, but yeah, so I'm just hoping to add a bit to this community. This community helps out me a lot, and hopefully this helps you sort of in your sort of roadmap to getting a more automated game, or maybe a more module based game. I think that Foundry really excels at modules. It sort of just adds a new breath of fresh air to the game, and sort of adds more breath is in more possibilities. It's a great thing to learn how to use modules and stuff, but not everybody either wants to or has the time to sort of read all that, all the sort of mechanical workings. I understand how it can be hard if you have the information to add it, but some creators tend to sort of add how this is working, this kind of coding talk, and it's a bit harder for those who don't know how to code or something. I personally don't know much coding outside of some macro syntax that I had to learn from just learning, making games for a while on Roll20 and then on Foundry. But not everybody wants to learn all that, and it's important that it's easy to find content. Maybe not easily digestible content in my case, but yes. So again, just tell me again down below if you have any suggestions about what you want to see next. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments below. Maybe you wanted me to cover more niche macros in the future, like more things like this, or maybe you want me to cover more dynamic active effects, like how to create a summoning spell. I have a few of those. How to create, in other words, a summoning spell that is actually automated, so it'll summon the token. And it's even timed too, so say something like Spiritual Weapon, where Mage Hand is out for 1 minute. Once a minute's up via about time, it'll just disappear. So we can sort of cover that if that's something you want to see next. If not, I'll sort of just pick and choose what I think would be fun to cover, or what I think would be pertinent to cover. But yes, so just let me know. It doesn't have to be dynamic effects / Midi-QOL related. If you just have a module that you're looking into, let me know. I have a few modules that say focus on teleportation, called Multi-Level Token. It's a great module. I highly recommend it. If you want to see a video on that, let me know. But without further ado, I sign off. Sorry again for being the king of Lego talk and rambling. I'm not so great at conciseness. I never have been. So, there's that. I understand that most people will be like, why can't you just make a script? I don't have a lot of forethought. I just sort of make a video whenever, and I sort of just wing it. So I'm sorry if that is sort of a hard format to swallow. I understand it can be a bit cringy, maybe a bit tiring, a bit annoying. But again, yeah, I've just always been this way. I'm a rambler. I'm a Lego talker. But yeah. Alrighty. I'll catch you next time. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. Again, comment down below if you want to sort of suggest what you want to see next. Or comment down below if maybe you have questions, if something wasn't explained very well in this video, which is entirely possible when it comes to me.